There are two different types of RAM. We're going to be looking at DRAM versus SRAM in the fight to who's going to survive. First of all, you need to know that DRAM stands for dynamic RAM and SRAM stands for static RAM. Now what happens is this: DRAM has these big black, kind of like batteries or buckets called capacitors, and inside the capacitors are electricity. Now, unfortunately, these capacitors, these buckets, have leaks in them, so electricity seeps out. When the capacitors lose all their electricity, the RAM forgets all the data which is kept inside it. So when you turn off a computer, you have your computer and you press that power button and you turn it off. What happens? It's dead simple. The electricity all goes, and instead it goes all blank. Now, what tends to happen is this: so that our capacitors do not, need to change back, so that our capacitors can keep on working. Remember, they leak electricity. So how the heck does it keep all our data if it's leaking electricity all the time? Well, every few milliseconds there's a recharge. It recharges all the capacitors. Every few milliseconds there's a recharge. It's called a dynamic charge. So it stops our capacitors from losing all the electricity inside it. Now, SRAM does not use capacitors. It uses something called a flip-flop. Now, flip-flop is not one of those shoes which you wear where you go on vacation. Yes, these are flip-flops. I'm not going to talk about flip-flops in computer terms yet, because I'm going to talk about that in a later chapter, later video. But what you do need to know is that data is stored in flip-flops, in SRAM, and it's stored in capacitors in DRAM. Let's have a look at some other differences. Let's imagine there's a race, and we've got the finish line here, and we've got the starting line here. SRAM would be in the front, DRAM will be lagging behind. So SRAM has got faster access speed, but that's where the fun stops for SRAM. So let's have a look at some other differences between the two. So DRAM is actually cheaper to make in factories. So when the factories make RAM, DRAM is cheaper to produce, a lot cheaper than SRAM. DRAM, believe it or not, even though they have this charge every few seconds, it takes less power to operate. So less, that's an electricity for DRAM. So that's two things to start off with. DRAM is cheaper to make, it consumes less power, and more unsightly, it contains more bits per chip than SRAM. So, whilst SRAM has faster access speeds, DRAM is cheaper to make, less power is used to operate it, and there are more bits per chip. So let me show you how a computer really utilizes them both. So you've got your cache, and you've got your main memory of RAM. And it's with our main memory of RAM that DRAM is used. SRAM is used in the cache. Why?